Moral excellence comes about as a result of habit. We become just by doing just acts, temperate by doing temperate acts, and brave by doing brave acts. Aristotle. Good afternoon, esteemed Board of Supervisors. My name is Phill Dupper, and I am an applicant for appointment to the position of sheriff. I grew up in Loma Linda, here in San Bernardino County, where I currently live with my wife, Jamie, my 13-year-old son, Jacob, and Jamie and I are currently expecting a daughter in December. For the last 25 years, I've been employed with the Sheriff's Department. I've been a lieutenant for the last 4.5 years and currently work at the Glen Helen Rehabilitation Center. Ancillary to my full-time job, I serve as the mayor of Loma Linda, now going into my 12th year on the city council. I am the immediate past president of the Inland chapter of the California League of Cities, and I have served on the statewide Public Policy Committee for the last 10 years. I serve on the Inland Valley Redevelopment Agency and the California Joint Powers Insurance Authority, and I'm also an alternate board member on the San Bernardino International Airport Authority and ConFire JPA. In 1998, I started a charity organization underneath the umbrella of the Sheriff's Department. Over the last 23 years, the Sheriff's Gift of Love program has provided Christmas to thousands of women and children housed at local domestic violence shelters in our county. In the remainder of my spare time, I am a facilitator for the Post-Sherman Block Supervisory Leadership Institute through Cal State Long Beach. SBSLI is an 8-month program dedicated to stimulate personal growth, leadership, and frontline law enforcement decision-making with law enforcement supervisors. I truly enjoy spending months with various law enforcement leaders talking about leadership, values, ethics, and just about every topic highlighted in the world around us. All of these things keep me pretty busy, but they've also taught me a lot about life, governance, and my beloved profession, law enforcement. I am seeking this position because I believe as an agency, we can do better. As I noted in my response to one of the initial questions posed by this board, many years of personal experience and conversations with other department employees has led me to believe the organization is struggling with internal procedural justice. Quite a few employees believe the department operates like a good old boys club, where personal relationships matter more than qualifications or efficacy.
The end of the 3-minute period.
Sorry, it goes pretty quick, Phil, doesn't it?
It does.
Sorry, but we're going to give you a lot of opportunity to speak yet. Want to start off, Joe?
Sure. Well, thank you, Philip, for applying. I appreciate it. One of the biggest issues and challenges, it's not just a county issue, it's a national issue, is obviously homelessness and mental health. What do you see the sheriff's role addressing homelessness and mental health within our county?
Well, it's not just a law enforcement problem, it's a governance problem. And so I think right now we put a lot of emphasis on law enforcement to solve that problem. And so what we need to do is connect with other partners, help other leaders realize that it's all of us together with it. But law enforcement does and always will address those issues as the frontline organization. I see a lot of growth in what we've done here in this county through our HOPE program. I believe it to be very successful, and my experience is not only with the department but on the city side as well. I think there's opportunity to expand that and to look at more and other options there. I do believe, though, that some of where we get hung up is not properly explaining or educating what we can do and what we can't do. And I think from my experience, again, in local government, I find that a lot of times law enforcement leaders don't quite understand some of those things on our side. And so we can do a better job at communication and helping people understand.
Thank you, Philip.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you for coming today. I know what it's like to sit on that side, and it's a little nerve-wracking, so I appreciate you being here, and I enjoy working with you as the mayor of Loma Linda. And with that, I do have a question. So the voters of Loma Linda elected you to be their mayor right now. and you'll be giving up your commitment to them if you are appointed to the sheriff. How do you answer to you foregoing that commitment to them, and will you leave the office of sheriff to pursue something better?
So that's a big deal for me, and it's a struggle. It was a hard decision to make here. I really enjoy and I love being part of my city. I love my city more than anything. But I felt this was a higher calling that I needed to address. And whether or not I'm ultimately selected, I believed I needed to step up at this point to talk about the things that are concerning me. And if I am selected, I would continue. The timing is not perfect in terms of how I would like to retire or do all of that. So I'm committed to staying around, obviously at the will of voters. But it was something that I've considered, and it was a tough decision to make that I would have to give that up.
Thank you. One of the questions my residents asked when they heard about the sheriff of man retiring is the policy for they're able to apply for a CCW. What's your feelings on the current policy, and would you change it at all?
I believe in CCWs. I believe in personal gun ownership. I think I would actually I would be happier if I knew almost everybody was armed and I wouldn't have to worry about who was and who wasn't. I think in today's world, with the limitations that we have as law enforcement in terms of just being spread so thin and the public scrutiny, I do believe that it's an opportunity for citizens to protect themselves. So I do believe in the CCW program, and I would like to see that continue as it has been.
Thank you.
Lieutenant, thanks for being with us today, and thank you for applying. In recent years, there has been a growing distrust between the law enforcement community and the community at large. First, do you accept that premise? And if you do, what would you do to repair, restore, strengthen the trust between the men and women of our department and the communities we serve?
I do believe it is a problem, and I think the best way to address it is to be more transparent. Now, I know that's a catchphrase that a lot of people use, but the way I would address it is getting people more involved in our processes. Last year, and on my particular city council, we had a new council member was elected. And right away, one of the first things that I wanted to do is get that person out on a ride-along, get them a tour of the jail system, get them acquainted with our processes. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to do that because of the COVID situation. But those are the types of things that I think are important. I think oftentimes in law enforcement, and this is it's nothing, how do I explain this? It's not anything bad, but what I see happen a lot, and we really love and enjoy our commander that is a representative for us in my city. But a lot of law enforcement leaders are not educated or they don't quite understand how the local government process works. And it's hard for them to communicate with elected leaders. And so what I often find is that we're hearing that law enforcement vernacular, right? They're speaking in terms like penal codes and radio codes, where I think sometimes I find myself stepping up to try to interpret what is being said so my co-council members can ingest it. And I think we can do a better job at that. Law enforcement, sometimes we are very closed-minded, closed-circled, and we interact with each other. We're not very good about interacting with the public, and that's where we need to step up.
Colonel?
Yes, thank you very much for being here today. And I had asked a question earlier about the troops. I refer to them as the troops. And I'm concerned about that because I think the general public might not understand the pressures that these young men and women are under every day, and the environment. I don't want to say it's like we're in a battle zone, but for lack of a better term, that's what it feels like. It's hard to do the right thing for a variety of reasons, a lot of pressure. And how would you motivate these young men and women? You're going to be the leader. And they're going to look to you and say, okay, we're going in a combat environment. How are you going to convince me and quite frankly, my family, that I should stay with this or go somewhere else.
Well, Colonel, thank you for that question. It's important to model behavior. And what I would do immediately, well, what I would be doing now if I was afforded the opportunity, but it's not within my assignment, is I would be out working alongside of our people. Not every day, not every month, but occasionally going out and working alongside of our people, leading by example. And I mentioned it in my application. One of the things that I would like to see is I would like to see our executives, lieutenants and higher, work a patrol shift or work a jail shift with our folks so our folks see that behavior modeled. When you talked about ethics and some of that stuff, doing the right thing, I think that's also very important. We have to model that as leaders, and we have to set that as a clear expectation to our troops. Our folks desperately want to do the right things. I talk to deputies all day long as part of my job, and our folks are trying, they're looking for guidance, they're looking for leadership. And sometimes we're not giving that to them, and I think we can do better.
Yeah, one of the things you mentioned, you worked at Glen Helen?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. What do you think would be some of the things we would try to do different, potentially on the policy side in regards to dealing with inmates and prisoners and, you know, some of the issues we may have in regards to nursing and staffing and some of the challenges we may have within the jails and institutions?
Well, it's seen as a place where people don't want to be. And traditionally, we've treated it as a place where people are sent on discipline. And we have to figure out how to get past that. Now, maybe we'll never get fully past that because most cops that sign up to do the job want to be cops. They want to go out into the field. But I do think there's an opportunity to look at hiring just jail-specific employees, deputy sheriffs that work just a career path within the jail system. There are plenty of employees that want to do just that, and we are in a position where over the years we've either forced some of them out when they didn't want to, or we've made it so comfortable that some didn't want to leave. There's still plenty that want to go out and be patrol deputies. But I think we should look at other counties that have modeled certain ideas that maybe we could pick up on. The other thing is that, you know, we talk a lot about body-worn cameras and things like that on patrol. I was part of the body-worn camera committee when we did the pilot project. Our patrol deputies loved those things, and I think everybody in the organization is behind us getting them. However, I think they should go to the jails first. That's the place when we're in a federal consent decree. That's the place where we are more actively monitored for use of force. We provide our folks with a digital tape recorder or digital recorder that barely covers an incident, and I think that's where we need to be focusing, and our folks want that stuff. They want to be protected. They're doing the right thing every day, and we go in and we scrutinize everything. In our decree, we do that. But I think there's a lot of room for improvement in the jail systems. The other thing is that our infrastructure is old. I work at one of the oldest facilities in the county, but that's not to say that the newest facility doesn't have problems either. We've overlooked this stuff for so many years. And so I think sometimes we get caught up in the wazoo, cool technology ideas. No offense, Supervisor Hagman, I know you love technology. But sometimes we get so focused on the cool new thing that we forget that we have infrastructure that needs work. And, you know, I don't know if that means building new facilities or rehabilitating current facilities, but we have to make these things livable. It's only right and fair.
Go ahead, Don.
Thank you. So you've mentioned in your application in here today that we can do better and that there are things within the department that you would like to see fixed and changed. The Office of the Sheriff not only holds the sheriff, but as well as the undersheriff and then 2 assistant sheriffs that are all at-will employees that would be appointed by you as a sheriff. Knowing that you have a desire to see change, would you keep those positions in place with the current personnel, or would you seek to change them to then change the organization?
So I've thought about that a lot in this process in the last week that everything has happened. I believe our people are good people, but they need direction, and we need to set clear expectations, and everybody needs to follow them. The chief complaint that I get from a lot of our employees is they believe that executives are held to a different standard than they are. And that breeds internal distrust of the organization. So there are things that I would want to accomplish, and I would expect my folks to be in line with and want to accomplish also. And that would therein lie where potentially there could be conflict. I would hope, I believe our people are very smart, educated people that can do great jobs. I would hope that they would get in line with some of this. A lot of this whole process is my hope that we can fix and right some of the things that I think have gone astray.
Phil, you mentioned my love for technology. With your particular position, I think you've seen a lot of changes in the jails for the last 2 or 3 years, especially with the courts telling us different care standards we have to do with our inmates, as well as we have inmates in there for a long time now. No more 1 year and less, and we send off the longer ones to prisons. We're holding a lot more. What do you see infrastructure, you talked about that, changes for the correctional facilities that we would need to embrace, and what would you pursue as the sheriff to make us more efficient in the largest county in the United States?
So in my last assignment before I was moved to corrections, I was over our IT unit, and I believe that we are way lacking in our total organizational infrastructure. I spent some time out at LA County. LA County has 2, maybe 3, I can't remember, I think, but at least 2 separate networks to support their operation. They have 2 10 gigabit networks, one that supports just the jails and one that supports their patrol operations. I don't want to get into it publicly here, but our network infrastructure throughout the county is very lacking. I mean, it is 30 years old. And for us to take on new ideas and projects and technology, which is awesome, we often go to that step first. And then it fails. And it fails because we haven't put in the work to make sure the baseline is there, to make sure our infrastructure is in place. We need to look at that. There's a lot of great opportunities in terms of jail technology, but we need to get some of that infrastructure in place. Some of our places, especially in this county, are very remote. And we need to look at some of the things that you've been exploring, whether it's Starlink or some of the other things. We got to figure out how to get service to those areas.
Thank you very much. Janice?
Lieutenant, I want to ask you to expand on your last answer to Supervisor Rowe and some of what you have in your application here. You say that the sheriff must set a standard for all 4 pillars. And you talked about these 4 pillars of leadership, and I think what you call the internal procedural justice.
Yes.
So when you said in your answer that things have gone astray,
Yes.
what is it that you think the current sheriff has neglected in these 4 pillars that have led to what you've said here?
So I personally struggle as to whether or not the officer of the sheriff is fully aware of how things have progressed. And I'm not sure. And some people are probably burning a hole in my head right now because they're adamant supporters of a man. And I think John McMahon is a good man, but I'm not sure how much of this stuff he is aware of and chose to overlook. I have had personal conversations with Shannon Dykes about a lot of this stuff. He and I used to go to breakfast once or twice a month to talk about leadership and ethics, and we have differing views on some of this. And I can give you specifics about things that occur within the organization. If you ask me, I'll answer the questions. If you want to do it one-on-one outside of this, I will do that also.
Well, I wanted you to expand a little on what you wrote here and the other comments that you made. So right now you've got this very vague things. There's stuff that's not good that maybe the current sheriff doesn't know about. I assume if the current sheriff isn't aware of it, then we're not aware of it either. So what's going on that leads you to this application and to say these things in public?
Well, let's start with our promotional system. We have a civil service process. People take a written test and they get an evaluation from their station command. That is bundled up somewhere at county HR and it puts you on a list and you are ranked in groups 1 through 5 or groups A through E or whatever they are. Once that is done and the organization wants to make a promotion or move, we have what's called the rule of 10. but it's not even just the rule of 10. It's like the rule of 15 or 20. Because the rule of 10 is they get the top 10 names off the list, and then among the Board of Chiefs, they can pick and choose whoever they want on that list. So it doesn't matter if somebody continually scores in Group 1 year after year after year, and even aces the test, they can be overlooked, and oftentimes are. So when I said it's not even just the group rule of 10, they get one additional name for each position they're going to promote. So sometimes they get 15, 20 names. And again, it becomes a group decision on who they want to pick based on who they like. Now, I've had conversations with leadership about this, and the pushback they give me is the stations are not properly rating people, and so those people are ending up in groups they shouldn't be in. And I don't understand that, because if that's a problem with the stations and the stations are not properly complying with the civil service requirement, then it needs to be addressed at the station level. What gives the organization the right to overlook people once they hit a list and they've tested at a certain level? That's one example, and is very prevalent. The other has to do with how people get moved around the organization. It's based on who you know and who likes you, and some people get stuck in places forever. There's rumors of secret lists of people that can't move. There's people that feel this way. So that's one example of where I just don't think we're doing the right thing by our employees, and our employees know it. And, you know, I give this analogy. Our folks go out and they handle the worst of the worst out in the public, and these people often lie to them. But when they come back to the office and we think that they're not smart enough to pick up that we lie to them also, that's where there's a problem. So when I say internal procedural justice versus external procedural justice, it's like modeling like a parent. If we're doing the right things internally and we set clear examples and we set clear expectations to what we want in the public, our folks are going to go out there and do that. But if there's ambiguity, there's a potential that they may not.
So just to be clear and not ambiguous, you're alleging that current leadership of the Sheriff's Department lies to members of this department?
Yes.
Thank you.
Colonel?
Yeah, just to follow up on that question, which is very disturbing. I've had experiences with promotions. And I think a lot of people, at least in the military, at least one particular branch, the number one reason that most people don't get promoted, fitness reports. And people don't write them, or they get lost, or what have you. If you don't have a fitness report, I don't care if you can walk on water and change water into wine or what, you're not going to get promoted. And I don't know how to correct that. I'm out of that environment, but I'm hearing something entirely different. And maybe that shows my ignorance in terms of the promotions system in a different environment. Anyway, I just want to have a quick segue into, you talked about some of the programs. Now, a number of months ago, they brought me up to the sheriff's office, and we met one of the pastors and his program that had a release program for people that were in, and I was really, really, really impressed. And the program, and you probably know it better than I do, but they work with Jack Dangerman. They have and they're doing this scientifically with all the different issues and factors and variables so that you don't have people that go out and they're back in again. But are you familiar with some of those programs that, and it seems to be very, very successful.
I'm not familiar with that one, sir, but I am familiar with ESRI and Jack Dangerman.
The what?
ESRI. You mentioned Jack Dangerman. I am familiar with that organization.
Oh, yeah. Okay. But, okay. That's all I have.
Thank you. How are we doing on time, Lena? I got 1 minute to burn here. I was going to give you, we cut you off at the beginning, okay, and I guess I want to conclude with, what, if you were sheriff, what would you expect out of the board to support you and the department? And then also any kind of follow-ups or things you'd like to expand on in the few minutes we have left.
Oversight. I believe you should establish an oversight board or committee to look into the organization. And as the 5 most powerful elected officials in the county, that unfortunately falls on your shoulders. And I think it's needed, and I think it's time. We're in a world where accountability is paramount. I'd just like to finish up what I was reading, if you would indulge me.
Absolutely.
I had a quote here from Maya Angelou saying that do the best you can until you know better. And when you know better, do better. About a year ago, I had an employee write me an email, and this was as I was transferred out of an assignment. August 6, 2020. Good morning, Lieutenant. I just wanted to send you blessings and well wishes on your new journey. Thank you for always listening and trying to handle the concerns. I also want to thank you for standing up for us even when it felt like you were standing alone. The righteousness will always prevail. Best wishes on your new journey. Lakeisha Nash, Communications Supervisor. Sadly, Lakeisha passed away earlier this year. Like I said before, as I believe internal procedural justice leads to external procedural justice, I'm committed to standing up for what I believe to be right. Toward that end, I hope this process brings about much-needed change in our organization. I'm open. Well, we already had our question and answer, so thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, sir, and thank you for joining us today and applying.
And I am
Value
available
public service.
for any other questions you may have offline.